It's no secret in Ontario that teachers' union bosses are extremely well funded. You've probably seen their advertisements all over social media. I know I have. And they've been telling Ontarians that the Premier is making cuts that will hurt our kids. Well, I'm here to set the record straight. I'm going to tell you 5 inconvenient truths that the Ontario teachers' union bosses will never admit. Number 1. Premier Doug Ford has brought education spending to an all-time high in the history of Ontario. That's right, he's increased education funding by $1.3 billion beyond what his predecessor, Liberal Premier Kathleen Wynne, spent. Now, the unions have spent a lot of time convincing Ontarians that he's making cuts to education, but this simply isn't true. Let the record show he has increased education funding by $1.3 billion beyond what his predecessor spent. Number 2. Most of the increases to education funding go into staff salaries. A recent Fraser Institute report found that from the year 2016 and the 10 years prior, 91% of the increased spending in education went toward teacher and staff salaries. But the union bosses would never admit this. They'll continue the same old line that it's about the kids. Number 3, school boards actually have a terrible track record when it comes to wasting taxpayers' money. Let's take the TDSB for example. Last year, the Auditor General found that the TDSB had wasted $150 to get a pencil sharpener installed with just 4 screws. They hired a contractor for 7 hours to hang 3 paintings. This summer, they had an opportunity to save up to 30% on construction costs simply by opening construction contract bidding to non-unions. They voted against it. Of the province's 72 school boards, only 3 took the Premier up on his offer to fund line-by-line audits to find savings. But the union bosses will never admit that there's room to save taxpayer money. All they want is more. Number 4. Ontario teachers are very well compensated. Now, union bosses don't want you to know this, but there are currently over 10,000 Ontario teachers on the Sunshine List, which means they're earning a salary of over $100,000 a year. When you factor in the value of their pension and benefits, top-earning Ontario teachers are taking home over $120,000 a year. Now, if the union bosses get what they want, these top-earning teachers are set to get a raise of $6,000 in the next 3 years. Keep in mind, they're already compensated at around $120,000 a year. And now we're asking Ontarians who earn half of that amount to foot the bill for these bigger raises, but the union bosses will never tell you that. Number 5, the number of teachers in this province has gone way up while student enrollment has declined. Publicly available annual reports on the Ministry of Education's website show that in the 15-year period preceding 2017, Ontario hired 11,000 more teachers, even though over that same time period, student enrollment decreased by over 250,000 students. ECEs and LTOs have even been removed so that we're comparing apples to apples. To conclude, Ontario teachers' union bosses have their own self-interest, and I don't blame them for pursuing it. But parents and taxpayers need to acknowledge this fact, and they also need to know the facts that union bosses will never admit.